I will now give the floor to Dr. Jeffrey Sachs, Director of the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network and Director of the Earth Institute at Columbia University.
President and Your Excellencies, thank you very much. And let me congratulate you, President, for calling us together on this unique thematic debate. I think there's no more important issue in the world than the one that we're discussing today, and I really want to congratulate you for your leadership in pushing forward so that we arrive at sustainable development goals that will do justice for the world's people and for our planet. And today's thematic debate is a very important step on the way to that. As you've heard now, both from President Jeremic and from the Secretary General, last week was a remarkable moment in the history of the planet. Maybe not in its 3.5 billion year history, or 4.5 billion year history, but in the history of humanity. And even well beyond that, because as this graph shows, only stretching back a mere 800,000 years, carbon dioxide levels have oscillated, mainly because of orbital cycles and feedback, between 200 and 300 parts per million up until the most recent years. And suddenly, you see this spike. That is us. That is humanity, changing the planet in a way that is unrecognizable for millions of years. And we will pay a price, even in our own time, and we will impose a devastating cost on our children and our children's children unless we come to grips with this basic reality. And ladies and gentlemen, 21 years after the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, we haven't even begun to change direction. And 41 years since the Stockholm Conference, we have not changed the needle. Even in iota, we are accelerating in a dangerous direction. And that's really what brings us here today. This is a word that everybody needs to know. It's the word that geologists now use for our time on the planet. It's the geologic term that means that humanity is now the driver of planetary change. Anthropos, humanity. Scene, meaning epoch. This is the human-driven epoch of the planet. For the first time in the history of Earth, the physical changes of the Earth are under the command of one species. May it be an intelligent one. So far, it is an unknowing one. We haven't even recognized what we are doing. But this term is what the scientists are now telling us. We have left what is called the Holocene, which was the nice era of stability since the last ice age. We are now in the Anthropocene. It is our generation's unique fate. And it's also our unique responsibility. This is another term of decisive importance for the future, planetary boundaries. And we are very lucky to have the lead scientist who led a team of worldwide noted ecologists and Earth system scientists in conveying the concept that in many dimensions of our activity, because we are now 7.2 billion people, because the average output per person is $12,000, because the world economy is now $80 trillion, unprecedented, and still rising, nearly doubling every 20 years. We are breaching planetary boundaries of safety, security, and life support. The greenhouse gas emissions are one of them. That will wreck the climate on which global civilization depends. The oceans are being acidified because of the carbon dioxide that we're burning in fossil fuels. We will destroy marine life. We will destroy the food webs that feed humanity. We are destroying the estuaries around the world. The estuaries, which are unique biomes. We're in an estuary here in New York City. They are being polluted. They are what is called eutrophied because of the massive flows of nitrogen and phosphorus that we use for fertilizer to feed the planet. This is tricky stuff. We're not doing this destruction. We're doing it unknowingly. We're doing it recklessly. But to get out of this is a massive set of puzzles because we need fertilizer. We need energy. This isn't frivolous. This is just hard. So the question that is before us is how we can achieve economic development within planetary boundaries. We all champion the right to development as a fundamental right of countries. But that is a right to development within planetary boundaries. That is the fundamental right. No place escapes. I don't care how sophisticated, how rich, how clever you think you are. And they think they're pretty clever on Wall Street, just a mile from here. But they were underwater a few months ago. It took 1 month to restore the power. This is the scene on 11th Street on November 2nd. On October 29th. The police cars underwater, people losing their lives, hospitals being evacuated. This isn't rich and poor. This is everybody. Rich people think that they're immune to this, but they're not. This is Beijing, the worst floods in modern times, the same year. This is Bangkok. The pictures fill a global picture book. There is no part of the world that is safe from what we're doing. This is your food supply, ladies and gentlemen. Last year, the worst drought in modern history in the United States. 25% decline of the maize crop and the soybean crop. It sent food prices soaring. It made poor, hungry people hungrier. The forest fires in the American West are running out of control, just as I know we're going to hear in Australia as well. This is no accident. This is supposed to be a sophisticated, rich country. Its forests are burning down, its crops are destroyed, its cities are underwater, its cities in the Southwest don't have water. We're cutting off water supplies to Mexico. Everything that we have assumed is not true because we assumed many convenient things, which are no longer the case in the age of the Anthropocene. This is the picture of the drought as of last summer. By the way, when you look at the labels, it's absolutely terrifying because the darkest red areas is called exceptional. The next red areas is called extreme. The beige is called severe. Oh my God. It's half the United States. And we know that there are long-term changes. I'm just picking on my own country because we're more asleep than most places in the world to this, even though it's hitting us as hard as any place. We had the hottest month in instrument history in the United States last summer, the hottest year on instrument record, the worst floods, the biggest drought. And do you think we talked about this? Almost not at all. Because politics has found a way to keep it off the agenda. We're just happily drilling and fracking and doing everything else without taking into account reality. And the reality is pretty grim, and it's causing loss of lives, loss of livelihoods, loss of livestock. I spent 2 years, the last 2 years, working on 2 mega droughts, one in the Horn of Africa in 2010-11, and the second in the Sahel, 2011-12. Both caused violence, both caused massive loss of life, both led to UN emergency appeals that were utterly neglected by the world, because the world's overwhelmed by crises. No one wants to hear anything more about emergency appeals. The list is too long. You're told we have our own problems. We don't want to deal with anyone else's problems. That's the Anthropocene. Welcome to it. This graph shows what's happening, the insurance company logs of how many disasters are hitting. The number of earthquakes, that we haven't affected very much, only the little ones by hydrofracking. But the floods and the cyclones and the droughts, those are soaring. Have no doubt about it. Yeah, of course, in our country, the oil companies will advertise not to worry. Don't worry, everything's under control. But just open your eyes. Nothing's under control. At least if you don't want your police cars floating away. This is a remarkable picture produced by then America's leading, U.S. government's leading climate scientist, who has recently retired from being NASA's leading climate scientist, James Hansen. It's a little hard for you to see, but it is 9 maps of the world. In the upper left-hand corner is 1955, and in the lower right-hand corner is 2011. Dark red means extreme warming episodes. You can see what has happened in the world. At the top, there were very few. On the bottom, the whole world is covered by what used to be extreme events, which are now normal events. What used to happen just 2 out of 1,000 occurrences as you rolled the dice is now happening 100 out of 1,000 occurrences. We're living now in an age where the extreme is now normal. Is that good for our kids? I don't think so. It's terrifying. And conflict goes with drought. All over the world, drought leads to famine, leads to war. The Horn of Africa, Yemen, Central Asia, the Sahel. This is not accident. Hungry people fall into violence. Terrorists take over. Demagogues, desperate people. That's what happens with drought and hunger. And we're going to have a lot more of this unless we start paying attention. Today, we're talking about what to do. There are solutions. Otherwise, we could just go home and cry. But there are practical solutions. We're just not taking them yet. Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber, who's one of the leaders in practical solutions, made clear about this. He's leading one of the most important efforts in Masdar, in the Emirates, of mobilizing renewable energy. We all know that even a small part of the Arabian Peninsula or a small part of the Sahara could provide all of the electricity needed for the whole world. It's quite extraordinary, but we're not doing it yet. What we're doing is celebrating how much better we are at sucking out every bit of hydrocarbon we can find and burning it. That will not solve any problems. We're living in a little bit of a gold rush in the United States right now. Hydrofracking, that's our new hot thing. People are making a lot of money. But nobody, no politicians, no leaders, is asking, what does this really mean for us? I'll tell you what it means. It's a dead end. Because we need to decarbonize our energy system, not recarbonize our energy system. It turns out that the offshore wind off the east coast of the United States, where we are, could power all of the power needs from Virginia to Maine, but we don't have one turbine built on offshore wind yet. Not one single turbine, because there's no leadership to do it. That's what's happening. How do you get to a decarbonized world? Energy efficiency, electrify automobiles and transport, which otherwise are emitting carbon dioxide from internal combustion engines, and move to low carbon energy. And there are many, many ways to do it. Solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, advanced biofuels, safe nuclear power, carbon capture and sequestration. But these are fringes still, because we haven't gotten serious. We think serious is what the financial markets want, quick profits. That's supposed to be serious. But I don't think that's serious. Serious is to save the planet and to save our economies and to not leave a devastation for our children, much less for our own time. And it's remarkable what science can deliver. As you already heard, the cost of solar power has come down by a factor of 100 since 1977. We're down from $77 a watt to 70 cents a watt. What are countries doing now that China is the low-cost world producer? They're putting up tariff barriers to low-cost solar. That makes no sense. We should be encouraging the massive deployment of solar power. Africa, which lacks electrification, has more solar power than any continent. And with good partnership, we could end this energy poverty with a little bit of planning and design. And we'll hear more about that later today. We are moving, ladies and gentlemen, from the MDGs to the SDGs. And in good time. That doesn't mean dropping the quest to end poverty. In fact, we will complete it under the SDGs. That is SDG 1, as President of the General Assembly said. It is the preeminent goal. But sustainable development means an integrated vision of economic, social, environmental, and governance in a balanced life on the planet. So the SDGs include the transition to low carbon economy, to sustainable agriculture, to sustainable cities, to more socially inclusive societies, and to good governance. And that's not good governance of some rich country pointing a finger at a poor country. This is good governance for the world, because heaven knows that the most recent financial crisis started on Wall Street, not in a poor country. It started in the core of the world market economy because it was not regulated properly. And so the governance starts at home. It's a universal good governance that we need. I want to draw your attention to an initiative of Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. We're honored that a number of people here today are part of this network. We're honored that Dr. Sultan Al-Jaber is a member of the Leadership Council of this network. This is a problem-solving network. It is to help every country in the world, not in high theory, but in practical problem-solving, how to deploy low-carbon energy, how to make agriculture resilient to climate shocks, how to make cities more resilient, how your universities can play a larger role. If you want your universities to be part of this network, to gain worldwide information flows, please let me know. This is the purpose of the network, is to make sure that every part of the world has access to cutting-edge knowledge at any time so that it can be in the forefront of problem solving in its own region, from the cities to the national to the regional. And we're very intent on making this a global, fully inclusive network. Do we have a sustainable planet? This is not a matter of a scientific forecast. It's not a matter of looking into a crystal ball. It is a matter of us. This is a choice. not a random outcome. This is what we decide to do. The future really is in the balance. It's in our hands. I say our, I mean the General Assembly. That is the world's hour. It's the only place in the whole world that the world meets in this way, as equals looking for justice. And I know that today's thematic debate will be an important step on the way to a sustainable Earth and to that justice that we all seek. Thank you very much.
I thank the Director of the United